Welcome, dear listener, to Sleepy Stories, where we wander softly through time and place, letting quiet tales carry you toward rest. If you enjoy drifting off with us, a gentle tap to subscribe and a kind comment help this little lantern of a channel keep glowing. And I'm grateful you're here tonight. Close your eyes if you like, and feel the Roman night gather around you, marble cooled by moonlight, tiled roofs breathing out the last warmth of the day, laurel leaves stirring as if whispering old news to the stars. Streets fall silent, fountains murmur to themselves, and distant hills hold the city like cupped hands. This evening, 3 spirits will walk beside us, softly and without fear. A gladiator who once dreamed of olive groves and freedom, a bath attendant who served the steam and never tasted it, and an elegant hostess who keeps laying a table for guests who never arrive. We will meet them kindly, listen gently, and let their stories thin and soften until they are no more than a lullaby. Breathe in, slowly. Breathe out, slower still. When you're ready, follow me across the quiet stones toward the amphitheatre that waits like a sleeping sea. You step through a shadowed arch and into a bowl of moonlight, and the amphitheatre rises around you in pale terraces, seat upon seat like calm waves stacked to the horizon. The air is cool and faintly mineral, a hush that tastes of dust and iron and stone kept quiet for centuries. Beneath your feet the arena sand lies smooth as a shore at first light, the day's footprints long since brushed away by patient hands, a pale canvas ready to receive only peace. Listen. Far above, a night bird turns a small circle of sound. Somewhere in the galleries a loosened flake of plaster settles like a sigh. The city beyond is only a soft heartbeat under the stars. Once, this place was thunder. Sandals on stone, the crack of gates, trumpet calls, and the salted roar of 100,000 throats. But tonight, the thunder remembers how to sleep. You stroll the edge of the arena, slow and unhurried, fingertips grazing the low wall, and you imagine the corridors beneath your feet, the Hippogeum, where handlers whispered to caged leopards, where pulleys creaked and doors lifted like stage curtains, where lamp smoke painted the ceilings in brown halos. Oil and leather, sweat and wet sand, the clean bite of whetstone on steel, these were the scents of daylight here, and even now the stone holds them as a seashell holds the sea. Breathe in, and let the echoes grow kind and far away. Breathe out and feel the shoulders loosen, as if each terrace of seats were a stair down into deeper rest. Somewhere, just at the corner of vision, a figure practices a slow, careful lunge, no clash, no shout, only the measured discipline of a life learned one repetition at a time. And when you look for him, there is only moonlight and the patient dust rising and falling like sleep itself. Come with me to the centre of the sand, stand where the world once looked inward. We will listen for his story, and when it comes, it will arrive like a quiet footstep, and we will follow it gently into the past. The figure in the sand grows clearer, and as you watch, his movements begin to tell you who he was. His body, broad-shouldered and scarred, carries both strength and the quiet weariness of discipline. This is no wild beast, but a man who has lived his whole life inside the rhythm of training, waiting and fighting. He was not born to roam. Few gladiators were. He first saw the great city as a boy, carried in among chained captives after a provincial skirmish so small it would never be recorded in the annals of history. For him, though, it was the beginning of everything. The clang of the gate, shutting behind him, became the punctuation mark at the end of his childhood. In the gladiatorial school, the ludus, he learned a new life, one measured in drills and bruises. The training yard was his classroom, its sand always damp from the sweat of men before him. The masters taught not just how to strike, but how to endure, how to fall without breaking, how to rise again in silence. Wooden swords thudded against wooden shields, again and again, until the rhythm itself was a kind of music. Meals were simple: barley porridge, beans, sometimes dried figs or onions. The Romans nicknamed gladiators hordeari, the barley men. Barley made the body heavy, slow, and enduring, the way oxen grow thick on rough fodder. Meat was rare, a treat saved for the days after a fight, when wounds needed strength to heal. His companions came from everywhere: Gaul, Thrace, Syria, even some Romans themselves who had gambled away their freedom or sought glory in the sand. Each carried stories of their lost homes, murmured in the night when the oil lamps burned low, and though they had been trained to see each other as rivals, they were bound by a shared fate, all of them tethered to the same uncertain tomorrow. By day, the city adored them. Children sketched their names in chalk on walls. Women whispered over which fighters were most handsome. Poets compared their duels to myths of gods and heroes. By night, those same gladiators returned to the barracks, locked in by heavy chains, as if the adoration of Rome could not quite erase the fact that they were slaves. He, though, kept a secret dream. Whenever drills ended and silence finally fell, he would close his eyes and see hills, Tuscan hills, where olive trees leaned silver in the sun, and where quiet farms stitched the valleys together in patient lines of green. He had never walked there in life, but some soldier's tale had painted it for him, and it had become his compass. In the noise of the arena, in the hunger of the barracks, he returned to that vision again and again. Not gold, not fame, not even the cheers of the crowd. Only a little land, a cottage, and the smell of pressed olives on the air. Fights were brutal, yes, but also strangely theatrical. Gladiators were not thrown into chaos. They were costume-trained, paired according to type. The Mamillo, with his broad shield and heavy sword, the Retiarius with his net and trident, the Thryax with his curved blade. It was combat, but also choreography, a deadly dance that Rome adored. Our gladiator grew skilled, too skilled to ignore. His name began to circulate in taverns, on wax tablets where bets were marked. He won duels not by ferocity, but by patience, by listening to the rhythm of breath, by striking not first but last, and with each victory his freedom drew nearer. For some, after enough triumphs, the wooden sword of release, the rudis, was granted, a symbol of liberty. He believed with every fibre that one day it would be placed in his hand, and he would walk north into the hills and never look back. The day came when freedom seemed within reach. He was older now, scarred but unbeaten in many matches. The amphitheatre filled until the air itself vibrated with expectation. He stepped onto the sand and saw his opponent. Not the giant he expected, not the brute the crowd had come to see crushed, but a smaller, younger man, nimble as a whip. At first he felt almost pity, but as the duel began, pity turned to disbelief. The smaller man darted, struck, vanished. His speed was a weapon sharper than steel. Blow after blow, the larger gladiator found himself turned, slowed, his own strength answering shadows. The crowd roared for the underdog, as Romans always did, delighting in reversal. And in a moment as quick as breath his dream collapsed. The nimble fighter's blade pierced the rhythm, and our gladiator fell, the sand drinking his sweat, his blood, and the last of his hope. He was not granted mercy. The emperor's thumb turned down, and the crowd demanded a finish. He died with the roar of Rome in his ears, and with Tuscan hills in his mind. And so the amphitheatre kept his soul. The place where he had fought, where he had dreamed, where he had fallen, became his prison and his stage. To Rome he was another fallen warrior, a name to be forgotten as new champions rose. But to himself, he was a man forever just short of freedom, forever stretching toward the olive groves that would never be his. Even now, centuries later, when the moon is high and the air is still, some say a shape lingers in the sand. Broad shoulders, a steady stance, the slow practice of a sword swing repeated in silence, a dream that never ends, a life paused just before release. And in the hush of the night, if you listen closely, you may hear not the roar of the crowd, but the gentler sound of breath, a man training not for glory, but for a freedom he never reached. The amphitheatre is empty, yet it is not silent. When the moonlight glances across the sand, the shadows themselves seem to stir. You feel the hush deepen, as if the night were holding its breath. Then just at the edge of vision, the faintest scrape, metal against stone, soft as a whisper. The gladiator is still here, not in flesh, not in triumph, but as a shade, what the Romans called a manes, a restless spirit of the dead. They believed such souls lingered where their desires had been strongest, or where their deaths had been bitter. For him, both belonged to this place, his yearning for freedom, his defeat, his last breath swallowed by dust. All of it clings to the stones. Watch closely. A figure takes shape in the pale sand. He moves with deliberate grace, each step measured, each thrust of his phantom blade as precise as if the crowd still watched. Yet no opponent stands before him, only emptiness. Still, he trains, as though preparing for a contest that will never come. Sometimes, when new fighters entered the ludus centuries ago, they spoke of dreams. Dreams of a man standing in the sand, correcting their stance, guiding their shield upward, whispering words of caution. Dreams so vivid they woke with their arms aching, their hearts racing as if they had fought already. The veterans told them, half in jest and half in awe, that the shade of an old gladiator walked among them, offering lessons even death could not erase. To others the ghost appeared differently. Travellers crossing the ruined amphitheatre by night swore they heard a crowd that was not there, faint cheers rising and fading with the wind, or the echo of drums when the moon was full. Yet when they paused to listen, the sound dissolved into silence. Perhaps it was the stone remembering, or perhaps it was the gladiator, still hearing in his heart the music of battle. In Roman belief, shades were neither wholly feared nor wholly welcomed. They were honoured on certain days, especially during the parentalia, when families left offerings at tombs, wine-soaked bread, garlands, a sprinkle of salt. The gladiator had no family to tend his spirit. His manes was left unappeased, untethered, roaming the place of his last struggle. Yet he is not a ghost of terror. He does not chase intruders or howl at the living. Instead, he's a figure of quiet discipline, repeating motions that once gave him purpose. His haunting is not rage, but memory. The rhythm of training, the calm before combat, the hope of freedom always just beyond reach. And so he endures, not with violence, but with patience, not with screams, but with silence, a ghost sparring with shadows, always in practice, never in victory. If you were to close your eyes here, you might feel his presence like a teacher at your shoulder, steadying your breath, slowing your movements, reminding you that strength is not speed but stillness, not frenzy but focus. In this way, his spirit becomes almost a companion, an echo of perseverance. There are stories of modern visitors who, sitting quietly among the stones, found themselves overcome by a calm unlike any other. They described it as if the arena itself was breathing with them, as if someone unseen was guiding their thoughts into gentleness. Perhaps it is nothing more than the weight of centuries pressing soft upon the soul. Or perhaps the gladiator, even in death, still seeks to share the discipline that shaped his life. Now the amphitheatre is yours alone, a great stone shell cradling your rest. The phantom fighter continues his endless drill, neither noticing nor needing your presence, yet somehow including you in the rhythm of his silence. Each sweep of his blade is another tide of calm. Each step across the sand is another invitation to sink deeper, slower, quieter. Breathe with him, move with him, or simply lie still and let his endless patience carry you further down. And as the night deepens, we leave him to his practice, content to linger here forever while we drift toward another haunt of Rome, one not of dust and sand, but of water and steam, of heat and whispered laughter. The arena lies quiet now, and the ghostly figure fades back into shadow. The sand is once again smooth, the moon steady, the terraces above as calm as a sleeping sea. Yet something lingers, not frightening, not heavy, but noble in its sadness. The memory of a man who fought for more than survival, who dreamed of soil beneath his fingernails, sunlight on olive leaves, and a life lived in peace. He did not win that life. His final moment was not triumph, but the bitter edge of defeat. Yet in this endless twilight, his ghost has found a strange dignity. He remains not to frighten, but to teach, not to rage, but to endure. His shade is a reminder that even loss can carry meaning, even disappointment can become its own kind of legacy. Somewhere in the silence you almost hear him breathe, slow, steady, patient. As if he is reminding you, yes, you who listen now, that freedom is not always the end of a journey, but sometimes the spirit with which you walk it. And perhaps in some way he has achieved what he longed for. No, he never touched the Tuscan hills, never felt the weight of ripe olives gathered in a basket, never bent down to taste his own harvest, but he has become part of Rome's eternal memory. His story lives on, softened by centuries, retold in whispers, carried into the dreams of those who pause to rest among these stones. In that way he is free, free from the chains of time, free to be remembered not as a victim, but as a figure of quiet strength. His olive groves may not stand in the earth, but they stand in the minds of those who imagine them, and in imagination they are endless. Let that thought ease your own breath. Let his patience become yours. For tonight you need not fight or strive. Tonight, like the gladiator's shade, you may simply rest in stillness, letting the rhythm of the past cradle you into peace. The amphitheatre grows dim, the figure dissolves, the moonlight cools the sand until it is no more than dust, drifting back into silence. And now, dear listener, we step gently away, out through the archways into the quiet Roman streets where fountains murmur and shadows lean across marble. Ahead waits another place of gathering, another life etched in labour and longing. Not the roar of the arena, but the hush of water. Not blood and sand, but steam and stone. Let us leave the gladiator to his endless practice, and turn our steps toward the baths where another ghost still lingers, not with sword and shield, but with bucket and brush, forever chasing warmth he never felt. The gladiator fades into silence, and you find yourself drifting through narrow Roman streets, where torchlight flickers in iron brackets, and the air is scented faintly with smoke, oil and bread cooling from the bakers' ovens. The sound of water draws you onward, a trickle, a splash, a muted thunder behind the high stone walls. You follow it until a great doorway opens before you, carved with marble lintels and flanked by tall columns. Step inside. The air changes at once. It is thick with warmth, heavy with steam, as if the very stones are breathing. Your footsteps echo against polished floors, where mosaics shimmer under the lantern light. Dolphins chasing one another, vines curling into endless patterns, gods watching with calm eyes. Listen, the faintest drip from a cracked pipe, the ghost of a laugh, too quick and too far away to belong to anyone real. Shadows curl against the walls like rising vapour. Once, this place was filled with voices, senators debating politics, merchants exchanging gossip, young men boasting of victories, children splashing in the shallow pools. Here the Roman world came not only to cleanse the body, but to bind itself together in warmth and water. Now, though, the chambers stand empty. Pools reflect only the tremble of torchlight. Benches wait for patrons who will never return. Yet in the hush there is still motion, a sense that someone tends the place even now, unseen but not absent. The faint clatter of a bucket, a sigh of phantom breath feeding an absent furnace. This is the domain of the bath attendant, a servant in life, still a servant in death, moving restlessly among the steam rooms and basins, yearning not to serve, but at last to be served. His story waits in the drifting mist, in the echoes of dripping water. Let us listen gently as his tale begins. The man who lingers here was never meant to be remembered. He left no inscriptions on marble, no sons to carve his name on a tomb, no grand deed sung by poets. His was a life lived in the shadows of steam and stone, where few looked twice and fewer still cared. And yet, the baths, these magnificent halls, bear his trace more deeply than any senator's speech. He was a bath attendant, one of many, a servant whose world began before dawn, when Rome still yawned and stretched in its sleep. While others dreamed, he was already stoking the fires. Down in the belly of the baths lay the furnaces, the hypocaust system that breathed heat beneath the marble floors. Wood was piled high, logs snapped and split, sparks leaping like tiny spirits into the dark. He fed those flames until sweat poured down his back, and the air itself shimmered with heat. Day after day, year after year, his labour kept the caldarium warm, the tepidarium gentle, the frigidarium bracing. Rome bathed because he and men like him burned. Above the furnaces in the bright echoing rooms, the patrons arrived. Senators with their rings of authority, merchants with the scent of money on them, soldiers scarred and proud, women and children bustling, laughing, gossiping. To bathe was to belong. A Roman without the baths was almost unthinkable. The attendant watched them all, but never as an equal. His tasks were endless. Scraping sweat and oil from wealthy bodies with strigils, carrying jars of olive oil perfumed with myrrh, sweeping the tiled floor so the mosaics gleamed. He fetched towels, carried sandals, tidied the benches. Sometimes he was ordered to massage aching shoulders, his own hands aching in return. And always there were jokes, some gentle, some sharp. Patrons teased attendants about their smell, their sweat, their rough tunics, and then they plunged into scented pools, laughing, while he returned to the furnace's mouth. He longed secretly to slip into the baths himself, to sink into warm water after hours of labour, to feel the tension drain from his body, to gossip and laugh instead of only overhearing. But servants were rarely permitted more than the coldest pools, and even then only at odd hours when patrons had gone, and so he remained dry, steaming not in comfort but in toil. Still, there were moments of amusement. Romans were proud of their cleanliness, yet their methods often made the attendants chuckle. They scraped sweat and oil from their skin, and sometimes even sold the mixture to be used in perfumes or remedies. They whitened togas with urine, gathered from jars set in the streets. To the bath attendants, these practices were absurd, but it was not their place to say. He grew skilled at anticipating needs before they were spoken. A patron would lift an arm, and the strigil was already there. A cough would echo, and a towel appeared at once. He moved quietly, almost invisibly, yet without him, the entire theatre of the baths would falter. He was a silent conductor, and the patrons never noticed the music he made. But inside him, a longing built. Each day he carried warmth to others and was denied it himself. Each night he left the baths exhausted, his own body unsoothed, his skin still streaked with soot and sweat. He told himself, tomorrow perhaps. Tomorrow, if the overseer looks away, I will dip my hand into the warm pool. Just a hand, only for a moment. But tomorrow always came with more orders, more fires to feed, more patrons to serve. And so the pools remained forbidden, shimmering just out of reach. One evening, after a long day of stoking, he lingered as the last patrons left. The air was still heavy with steam, the mosaics glistening as though alive. He walked slowly toward the caldarium pool, every muscle aching, and bent down. He touched the surface of the water with his fingertips, warm, alive, almost holy. But a voice barked from behind him, the overseer sharp and suspicious. The attendant snatched his hand back, bowing, murmuring apologies. The moment was gone. The overseer's sandals slapped across the tiles, and the attendant was driven back to the furnace once more. It was then that he understood. He would never have the baths, not in life. His role was to serve, not to share. His body would ache, his lungs blacken with smoke, and when he died, it would be as though he had never been there at all. And so it was. His life ended quietly, without notice. Perhaps a cough that grew deeper, perhaps a fever from the constant damp. Perhaps he simply collapsed one day, falling where no one cared to mark his name. The baths went on without him, fires fed by other hands, floors scrubbed by other servants. His absence was swallowed as quickly as a drop of water in the pool, yet his spirit remembered. His desire unfulfilled left an imprint stronger than marble. He had given his body to heat and steam, but never felt their comfort. And so he returned, a ghost not of anger, but of longing. And even now, in the echoing chambers, if you lean close to the water's surface, you may feel a ripple, as though someone unseen has touched it first. The baths lie empty now. Their marble walls are cracked, their fountains silenced, their pools shallow with dust. Yet if you listen carefully, something stirs. The drip of water that should not be there. The faint scrape of a bucket across tiles long since broken. A sigh of breath where no fire burns. This is the bath attendant still at work. His spirit lingers, moving through chambers as if nothing has changed, as if the patrons will return at any moment. He walks unseen, feeding phantom furnaces, his arms forever weary, his back forever bent. Where the caldarium once glowed with heat, now only shadows ripple, yet he stokes the ghost of a fire, waiting for warmth that never reaches him. Sometimes visitors to ruined baths have sworn they felt it, a sudden flush of heat in a cold corridor, as though stepping past the open door of a furnace. Others speak of mist rising on the clear nights, coiling gently across the floor until it vanishes again. The Romans themselves believed in such hauntings. Spirits of servants, bound not by chains but by duty, were thought to wander endlessly, repeating tasks long after life had ended. And so he wanders, carrying invisible buckets, tending to baths that no longer hold water. He hears voices that are gone, senators bickering, soldiers boasting, women laughing softly as they lower themselves into steaming pools. He turns at the sound, eager to serve, but the voices fade, leaving only silence. His yearning shapes the haunting. Now and then, a warm breath of air drifts across the frigid areum, though the fires are long extinct. The surface of a pool quivers, though no stone has fallen. Some swear they have seen the shimmer of steam curl through broken arches, rising like a ghost of the old days, and if you sit quietly, you may hear footsteps circling the chamber, soft, hurried, the pace of someone always rushing, never resting. There is no malice in him. He does not startle, does not frighten. Instead, he seems always on the edge of fulfillment, chasing a comfort he cannot catch. He is a haunting of longing, not of fear. And yet, some say that very rarely he slips, that the yearning grows strong enough to pull him closer to the water. On such nights, a ripple moves across the pool, gentle as if a hand has brushed it. A sigh stirs the air, almost content. And for a heartbeat, perhaps, the ghost of the attendant finally touches what he was denied in life. But then it fades, and his footsteps return to their endless circuit. Romans often imagined their spirits gathered together during the Lemuria, a festival when the living placated restless shades with offerings of beans, tossed behind them into the night. Perhaps if beans had been offered here, his spirit would have found peace. Yet no family remembered him, no offering soothed his longing. The baths are his tomb, and his endless rounds are his prayer. For those who visit now, there is something strangely calming in his presence. To sit in the ruined baths at twilight is to feel watched over not with menace, but with care, as though someone still sweeps the floors, still tends the rooms, still makes the place ready for you, and perhaps that is his gift. Though he never bathed in warmth himself, his haunting gives warmth to others, not through fire or steam, but through memory. The comfort of knowing that even the most forgotten life leaves its trace. Even the humblest servant becomes part of Rome's eternal breath. The steam curls away, and the chambers fall quiet once more. The phantom footsteps fade, the faint warmth dissolves into cool night air. Yet the presence of the attendant lingers, tender and unresolved, like a sigh caught between breaths. He was never the master of these halls, never the bather or the guest of honour. He was the one who toiled, who stoked the fires, who kept the warmth alive for others. In life his reward was only exhaustion. In death his longing became eternal. And yet there is no bitterness in him, only yearning. He does not lash out, does not darken the rooms with anger. Instead he continues his endless rounds, as if hope itself has kept him tethered. Hope that one day he may lower himself into the water, feel it embrace him, and at last be soothed. There is something almost noble in his persistence. Even denied comfort, he continues to give it. Even forgotten, he continues to tend. The ruined baths feel less abandoned because of him. Visitors sense a hush of care, a softness in the air, as though invisible hands still keep the place ready. In this way he has become what he most desired, a keeper of warmth, and perhaps in his haunting he finds fragments of peace. Each ripple across the pool, each wisp of phantom steam is a glimpse of the life he longed for. He never sat among senators or dipped into scented oils, but his spirit has claimed the baths in another way, as their guardian, their quiet soul. So when you breathe in now, imagine that warmth wrapping around you. Let it fill your chest. Let it soften your muscles. Let it remind you that care can exist even in the unseen. The attendant continues his service, not for others anymore, but for you, for any who pause long enough to listen. And as we step away, we leave him to his gentle rounds, his endless tending. The drip of water fades, the air clears, and the silence of Rome settles again. Ahead the path leads upward, into the hills where villas once shone with lamplight, where gardens breathed of rosemary and mint, where parties and feasts rang deep into the night. There, another spirit waits, not humble, not weary, but elegant, prepared, forever expecting guests who never come. The baths dissolve into silence, and you follow a winding Roman road, climbing softly into the hills. The night air grows cooler, scented with rosemary, thyme, and the faint sweetness of crushed figs fallen from trees. The city lies below, a scattered glow of lamps, while above you the stars hang like polished coins across the velvet sky. Soon you reach a villa. Its walls are pale in the moonlight, its roof tiled in orderly rows, its garden lined with cypress trees that lean as though listening to secrets. Bronze lamps burn gently at the entrance, their flames steady despite the night breeze. Through the open doorway you glimpse marble floors, frescoes of gods and garlands, and couches set ready around low tables. Step inside. The air is perfumed with herbs and honeyed wine. Musicians seem to wait in the corner, though when you look, there is no one there. A table is laid with dishes, olives in silver bowls, platters of bread, the faint glisten of honey across roasted fruit. Cushions are arranged just so, as though guests might arrive at any moment. But the house is empty. No laughter, no footsteps, no voices, only the sense of anticipation, stretched delicate as silk. Somewhere within, someone is still preparing, still arranging, still waiting for her guests to come. This is the lady of the villa, elegant, gracious, forever hostess. In life she was known for her feasts, her charm, her effortless grace. In death, she wanders here still, unaware that the banquet ended long ago. Her story waits in the glow of lamps, in the fragrance of herbs, in the silence where music should be. The lady of the villa was born to comfort. From her first breath she was surrounded not by smoke and labour, but by silks, perfumes, and the quiet footfalls of servants who anticipated her every need. She was educated, as wealthy Roman women often were. Not for public office, of course, but for the art of conversation, the subtleties of poetry, the weaving of words that could hold a dinner table as surely as a harp string holds a tune. She grew graceful in a world of abundance. Her gowns were of fine linen, dyed in costly colours and saffron, indigo, the blush of imported rose. Her hair was dressed by handmaids each morning, curled and coiled, dusted with gold powder until it shimmered in the lamplight. To walk into her atrium was to enter a theatre of taste and refinement, where every fresco, every mosaic, every polished table whispered of wealth. Her husband was a trader in metals, respectable enough, but his dealings reached deeper than polite company knew. Silver from Spain, copper from Cyprus, iron from the provinces, yes, but also whispers of darker trades, smuggled coin, contracts struck in shadows, debts paid with silence rather than denarii. She smiled at these matters, never admitting knowledge, yet perhaps she understood more than she let slip. In Rome, women of her standing were expected to preside over the household, not merely to order servants, but to shape the tone of gatherings. And so she became a hostess of rare talent. Her banquets were the envy of the hills. Guests reclined on couches draped with embroidered cushions, their sandals set aside, their robes loosened in comfort. Slaves poured wine spiced with cinnamon and honey, while musicians played lyres and flutes in the corner. Dishes arrived in procession, figs stuffed with almonds, dormice rolled in honey and poppy seeds, roasted game birds sprinkled with pepper and garum, platters of oysters glistening on beds of crushed ice. Between courses, poets recited verses, actors mimed short plays, jugglers tossed bronze balls until the lamplight turned them to sparks. The lady herself drifted among her guests, smiling, listening, offering a word here, a gesture there. She was never loud, never overbearing. Her presence was the true entertainment, gracious, elegant, endlessly attentive. But splendour has shadows. For every guest who toasted her beauty, another whispered behind her back. Some said her husband's wealth was ill-gotten, that her jewels glittered with the dust of stolen mines. Others envied her influence, the ease with which senators and merchants alike leaned in to catch her words. And still others wondered at the faint tension in her eyes, as though she smiled not only from grace, but also from vigilance. In truth, her life was not as serene as it appeared. Her husband's dealings weighed on the household. Late at night she heard murmured arguments in the tablinum, saw scrolls whisked away when she entered unannounced. And once, at a feast, she noticed a guest who would not meet her gaze, a man who raised his cup with trembling hands. Poison, she thought suddenly, though she laughed it off. But the thought remained. Her final days came with whispers. She prepared for a banquet, the couches laid out, the musicians summoned, the wine jars uncorked. Guests arrived, the lamps burned, and laughter filled the villa as it always had. She moved among them with her usual elegance, though her smile was a little too bright, her step a little too quick. Midway through the evening she raised a cup of wine. She drank, smiled again, and then paused, a flicker in her eyes, a tremor in her hand. The cup fell, and the music stumbled into silence. Some say she was poisoned, a victim of her husband's enemies or perhaps of his betrayal. Others claim she simply collapsed, worn down by years of quiet worry. Whatever the truth, she died among her guests, surrounded by splendour, with the lamp still burning and the food still steaming on the tables. The banquet ended in panic. Guests slipped away, servants whispered. Her body was carried to rest. The villa fell silent. Yet for her, the feast never ended. In her mind the lamps still glow, the couches still wait, the musicians still prepare to strike their strings. Death came too suddenly for her to recognise. And so her spirit lingered, caught in the delicate moment between welcome and farewell. She believed, even as centuries passed, that her role as hostess was not yet complete, and so she wanders still, draping phantom cushions, summoning musicians no one else can hear, calling softly for servants who never answer. Every night is the night of her banquet, and every moment is the pause before her guests arrive. Her villa, long since crumbled, remains touched by her presence. Some say they have heard faint music, drifting from broken walls, or smelled honey and herbs where no feast remains. Others claim to see a glimmer of lamplight through shattered windows, though inside there is only darkness. She waits, poised and elegant, forever preparing for a gathering that never begins. The villa stands quiet, its walls cracked, its gardens wild. Yet when the moon climbs high, something stirs. A lamp flares where no oil burns. Music trembles faintly in the air, not loud, not clear, but the ghost of strings touched by unseen fingers. Step inside and the emptiness fills with anticipation, as if the feast is about to begin. She is here, the lady of the house, moving gracefully from room to room, arranging what no longer exists. She smooths phantom cushions, adjusts invisible lamps, gestures to servants who never appear. Her presence is not frightening. Instead, it is strangely sad, strangely tender, a woman caught in an endless rehearsal for an evening that will never arrive. Guests never come, yet she waits, poised, elegant, with the patience of one who believes the world is only running late. Her voice drifts through the corridors, calling names that no longer belong to anyone living. Sometimes the syllables are clear, but more often they are blurred, as though softened by centuries of repetition. Those who have wandered near the ruins speak of hearing laughter where there is none, or smelling roasted figs and honeyed wine on the breeze. Some report faint footsteps, the rustle of silk trailing across a mosaic floor. A few swear they have glimpsed her, a pale figure in a stola, hair coiled and glinting, lifting a cup in silent welcome. The Romans themselves would not have found this strange. They believed that the lares, household spirits, lingered to protect or haunt the places they once cherished. For this lady, her villa was not only her home, but her stage. To preside over banquets was her role, her pride, her joy. In life it gave her purpose, in death it became her prison. Yet she does not rage against it. She moves with the same poise she had in life, endlessly preparing, endlessly expecting. The air hums with her anticipation, as though at any moment the doors might open and her guests flood in. Sometimes her haunting takes a sharper edge. A traveller may approach the ruins and hear a sudden burst of music, lyres and flutes, laughter and applause, only to find silence when they step closer. Others claim the lamps blaze brightly for an instant, then vanish, leaving only starlight. A few even say they felt a hand brush their arm, gentle and fleeting, as if the hostess had welcomed them in. But most often her presence is subtle. A glow at the corner of vision, a scent of herbs on the night air, a hush of expectancy, like the moment before musicians strike their first note. To watch her is to witness denial made gentle. She does not know she has died, or perhaps she chooses not to know. In her mind the party is about to begin, and she must be ready. She is caught forever in that pause, arranging, waiting, believing. And so she continues, century after century, her villa slowly falling around her, her banquets dissolving into dust, her guests forever absent. Yet her spirit remains elegant, gracious, timeless. She is a haunting not of terror but of beauty, a reminder that even splendour can fade, yet the longing to be seen, to be admired, to be loved endures beyond death. If you stand quietly in her hall, you may feel it yourself, the sense that you are awaited, that a place has been set for you at the table, that a cushion has been arranged for your rest. Her presence enfolds you not with fear, but with welcome. She's still the hostess, and in her endless preparation you become her guest. And though the music will never begin, though the feast will never be served, there is comfort in her persistence. She has become the soul of hospitality itself, waiting for an arrival that will never come, yet never ceasing in her care. So she lingers, a lady caught in time, her villa glowing faintly in the memory of Rome. The night holds her laughter, the walls hold her grace, and the silence itself carries her anticipation. And when you step away, you carry her with you, the gentle echo of a hostess still waiting, still welcoming, still preparing for a banquet that will never begin. The villa grows quiet, the phantom lamps dim, the music fades back into silence, and the faint rustle of silk dissolves into the still night air. Yet her presence remains, delicate as perfume long after the bottle is empty. She is a spirit of beauty, not terror. A woman who lived among splendour, who built her life around gatherings and grace, who wished always to welcome others into warmth. And now, even in death, she holds fast to that role. She has become the eternal hostess, waiting with unfailing patience for guests who will never arrive. There is sadness in her story, yes, to be caught in an endless pause, to long for a banquet that never begins. But there is also gentleness. She does not rage or despair. She simply continues, poised, elegant, graceful as ever. In this way she is not trapped so much as preserved, a memory of hospitality lingering in the air of Rome. Perhaps this is her true legacy. Not the jewels she wore, not the feasts she gave, not the whispers of intrigue that may have ended her life. Instead, it is her endless care, her willingness to prepare, her belief that her guests are worth waiting for. That belief, sustained through centuries, softens her haunting into something almost comforting. When a travellers glimpse her light, or hear faint laughter on the wind, they do not feel fear. They feel as though someone has remembered them, someone has kept a place for them, someone has been expecting them all along. And is that not what we all long for, in life or in death? To be awaited, to be welcomed, to be missed if we do not appear. So let her presence ease your heart. Imagine reclining among her cushions, a silver cup at your side, music hovering just beyond hearing. You are her guest now, and she will not let the evening begin without you. And in that gentle certainty, there is rest. The lamps flicker once, then fade. The villa breathes out into silence. The hostess smiles her soft smile, still waiting, always waiting, and we leave her there, poised forever at the threshold of a feast that will never come. Ahead the stories draw together. 3 ghosts, 3 lives, 3 longings. Their voices soften, blending into the hush of Rome's eternal night. It is time to take leave of them all. The night of Rome grows deeper. The streets are hushed, the fountains murmur softly to themselves, and the stars hang steady over marble and ruin alike. The city, once thunderous, now breathes like a sleeper, slow, calm, eternal. We have walked among its ghosts tonight, listening not with fear but with gentleness. We have stood in the amphitheatre with the gladiator, who dreamed of olive groves and freedom, but remained bound to sand and shadow. We have wandered the steamy chambers of the baths with the attendant, whose whole life was labour, and whose afterlife is longing. And we have entered the villa of the lady, still arranging her banquet, still waiting for guests who never arrive. 3 spirits, each caught by desire, a man who yearned for peace, a servant who yearned for warmth, a hostess who yearned for company. Their lives were unfinished, yet in their haunting they have become more than sorrow. They are memories softened by time, wrapped now in quiet dignity. Even in restlessness they remind us of something tender, that our longings, our dreams, our hopes, even when unmet, carry beauty. That the places we touch remember us, just as the amphitheatre remembers its fighter, the baths their attendant, the villa its hostess. Rome holds them all in its silent embrace, and in listening we have held them too. Now let them fade. The gladiator sets down his phantom sword. The attendant steps away from his endless furnace. The lady smooths the last cushion and waits in silence. Their voices soften. Their shapes dissolve until only peace remains. And so, dear listener, may peace be yours as well. Breathe slowly, as the city breathes. Rest deeply as centuries rest. Let the ghosts of Rome keep watch while you drift beyond their stories, beyond time itself, into dreams. Thank you for sharing this journey tonight. If you found comfort here, a gentle subscription, a kind comment, helps this circle of dreamers grow. But for now, you need think of nothing at all, only rest. Rest now, as the ghosts of Rome fade into silence.